Welcome, everybody, to the Next Best Picture podcast, where we are talking with Bill Skarsgård, one of the stars of Nosferatu. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Dan.
It's my pleasure, trust me. I'm very excited to talk to you about this incredible film and your completely transformational performance in it. I know that you had first expressed a desire to work with director Robert Eggers after seeing The Witch, and I'm curious if that changed at all after Alexander's time working with him on The Northman.
I don't know if I would be sitting here if it did. But yes, I mean it's been a journey and I it's also not only with Eggers but with Nosferatu in particular. I read the Nosferatu script after he had done The Witch when it was first about to be made. It would have been his second film at that point, and read for it, and then eventually got casted as the Thomas Hutter role that Nick Holt is playing in the movie. And then the movie fell apart, and then it almost came up again, and then it fell apart, and then was supposed to be in The Northman with Alex, and we were all in Belfast. 2 days away from shooting, we were camera testing. I had hair extensions in. I was going full Viking, and then COVID happened. So, led to scheduling issues, and I couldn't be in the film anymore, which was also devastating. And then yeah, after that movie, and then I heard his fourth film now it is Nosferatu is coming back around, and I was like, well, does he still want me for Thomas? I was supposed to be the lead in it, and then things had changed, and he casted Nick, and then I was like, what about the Frederick Hardinger role? I think I could do that role good, and then he went with Aaron Taylor Johnson, and I was like, oh man, maybe my collaboration with Robert Edgars was never to be. But then, out of the blue, he approached me and asked if I would entertain the idea of playing Orlok. So here we are. It's been a long journey. But to answer your question, no, it didn't change. My want to collaborate with him at all. Um, um, and uh, and Alex said, he's been talking about it as well, that it was a very demanding role for him in the Northman, and it was a demanding shoot, but it was also something that he was so happy with, and how he really enjoyed the process of working with Robert and Jaron, the DOP, and his entire team of people. It is world building at its highest level, and yeah, so it's just a bit of pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that one of the things that Robert did for this movie was that he wrote a novella with extensive backstories for all of these characters. So I'm curious if you had a chance to read that at all before doing your prep work for this. And if you did, or even if you didn't, if you just talked to him about it, what about his version of Orlok spoke to you the most?
Um, Yeah, well, like I said, I read the script 10 years ago, and I loved it.
Hmm.
I read it first with Hardinger in mind, which was the first role I auditioned for, and then Thomas Hutter, and so I've read this script with three different perspectives in terms of who I would portray in it. So I was very familiar with Robert's version. Um, um, and then, yes, he did reach out, and it was this kind of like, I think you can do this. Let's have 10 days of kind of workshopping the character together, and then screen test for it, and convince everybody, including myself, including Robert, and the studio, that I would be a good fit for the role. um, um, and it was a wonderful process, because he would share with me at that point all of his ideas, and he would shared with me this backstory of Orlok, the little novella that he wrote, a few pages long, but it was enough in there to go, okay, this is what motivates the character and explains where he's coming from. Uh, and we would share references together, back and forth, on different performances, or like a little bit of here and a little bit of there, and then of course the voice, which I worked really hard on for the screen test, but it wasn't nowhere near as good as it is in the film, I think. So, but it was me exploring it and seeing if I can channel it and if I could get it as deep and as possible, and flesh out the character. The voice is the character is so hidden in the shadows for so long in the film that the voice is what's what I am performing a lot of the times. I mean, I'm performing all of it, but it is what's being shown a lot of the times. So I knew that was going to be a very pivotal part of the character, and yeah, in terms of his version, it's like any Robert Eggers film. It's just opening up the history books and delving as deep as you can into the research, and all of the ideas are motivated by actual historical facts. And with this Orlok, it is the vampire Orlok is based off of folklore, what people in this region believed vampires to be, which is a pretty far away from the handsome, suave, romantic lead vampire that we've gotten accustomed to. So that was part of what motivated the look of the character. It's a rotting corpse because that's what they believe vampires were, and then also what Dracula is, and what is a Transylvanian version of Dracula, and then the sort of the occult becomes a big thing about that, and sorcery and Solomonari, which is this Transylvanian, or Romanian, folk belief, of people going to school with the devil to learn the dark arts. So all those things became pieces that fleshed out the character.
Yeah, there's so much that you had to do to transform yourself into this character, but you're also relying in a lot of ways on the work of craftspeople, of the costume designers, of the makeup designers, especially. And I'm curious, what was your reaction to the initial hair and makeup designs for Orlok? And then what was your reaction when you first saw yourself with all that makeup on for the first time?
Yeah, well, Robert had done a digital drawing, of what he thought the character could or should look like, and he shared with me, um, when we were screen testing for it, or when I was prepping for the screen test. And I'm like, oh, it looks amazing. And then 2 years went by because the movie ended up falling apart after I booked the part of Warlock as well. And then 2 years gone by, and then it's like, okay, now we need to like dig up the character again. And the first time I saw, David White did an incredible job with the special effects makeup and the prosthetic design. The first time Robert shared with me the molds of the character, or the bust of the character, that they used my face and they build on top what Orlok would look like. And I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing of me here. And I told Robert, I'm like, this guy did not look like me when he was alive. Not only is he a rotting corpse, but when he was alive, his bone structures and facial features were very different from my own. And that was very daunting. And the first time we did the prosthetic test, and they applied it all on, was a couple of months before we started to shoot. And so I knew that we had room to change and potentially improve. And I was really worried that I couldn't make that face come alive. And also maybe it wouldn't even look real. And that is obviously the biggest task. There's like, this needs to feel like this being is real and it's not an actor with prosthetics on. And then once they started putting them on, I'm sitting staring myself in the mirror and seeing the layers upon layers come on and looking at it, criticizing it, seeing it mo move and how it translates onto my own expressions and how my face will, orchestrate the movement of this new face that you put on. It's mask work, really. And there was at a stage before all the facial hair and the and the wig came on where I felt like I looked like a goblin, and I was like, this does not look real. It does not look like I intended it, or even like potentially Robert intended it. It looks awful. But once the pieces came on and I could see it all, and they blended the pieces, I saw him come alive. I saw that it would work, and then it becomes exciting. But then again, it was 2 months away from shooting, so I didn't feel like I was ready to embody the character. And it wasn't until our second camera test that we did, when we were fairly close to shooting, and I had the costume on. The outfit is beautifully designed by Linda Murin, and I'm sitting there, and we have the camera, and you hear the subtle sound of film rolling because we shot it on film, which is exciting in its own right. And Jaren had 112 lit candles to light my face, and we have a lot of atmos, a lot of smoke to get the texture you want, and I'm feeling it, and I'm feeling it, and as we're rolling, I'm sitting there, and I became Morlock, and I felt it. I was like, there he is. And Robert walked up to me afterwards and said, there he is.
Ah, incredible.
Yeah, relief for certainly for me, but also for Robert that we had found him.
I can imagine, yeah. I know we're getting close to the end of our time together, but you know that you talked about the voice and how you had to work a lot to get that to the right pitch. And I know that you worked with a vocal coach to get your voice lower and lower and lower, to the point where even though they recorded you with a hypersonic microphone, they said that your voice and the dialogue didn't need any extra enhancement, but they did enhance these, the guttural growls and other noises that you made. So
Yeah,
thinking about all this, I am curious about this last final scream of Orlok that he gives in the movie during that final sequence. It's so visceral in his emotional and physical pain that he's experiencing, but knowing that it's not fully you. What were Robert's notes for how he wanted you to sound, and how did you approach that scream?
yeah, there's like the breath and the growl is all me until basically the end of the film.
Mm,
And it is, I've done this before, and I've had like prosthetic characters before, and with Pennywise there was a lot of times where there's a lot of CGI, too much CGI for me, where I was like, okay, well, because every director have their own sort of approach to it. But of course, as a performer, I'm like, I think there, and I with Robert, and I'm very thankful for his approach to this. It's like he didn't touch much of any of it, and I was like, this is fucking amazing. Like all of my work is there on screen, and the breath and the growling and all of that up until the final scene, the final moment of the scene. And it is the only moment in it where I go, there's also a breath added there that's like almost sounds like a horse. It's like
mm,
this kind of horse like so, and is added on top. And that's like the only thing to me when I watch the performance as a whole where I go like, ugh, like how do like it feels like it's added on and modulated in a way. And the scream, it's actually me screaming, and then it's added, all these kind of animalistic sounds are added on top of it. But there was so much of the of shooting that final scene because it's all shot in one take, that it was 30 takes of dying in pain slash ecstasy and orgasmic cathartic moment. There was so many technical things that we weren't going like, what's nitpicking on the sound of the scream as much. It just sounded like a really painful scream. And they added on top of that. Yeah. But again, I'm just very thankful that that Robert, he works so hard he doesn't like CGI at all, even. So much of the performances and my performance is what we got on the day, and it feels real and analog, if you will, So it was great. It was great. But yeah, the only time, not the scream itself. I'm happy with that. But there's added animalistic sounds to that's the lead up to the death scene where I'm like, I know I didn't do that.
But it all sounds great and looks great. And hearing you talk about it is even more fascinating. I feel like I could talk to you for hours about this, but that's unfortunately all the time we have. So, Bill, thank you so much for your work in the film, and thank you for speaking us about it today.
Thank you so much, Dan.